Now, when we think of ayahuasca, generally, if you're reading a book that was printed in America or you're watching a video or listening to a lecture, a lot of people start off by describing ayahuasca as an edible form of DMT. But I've heard you and others say that our predisposition to thinking about anything that alters your consciousness as a drug gives us the wrong idea of the experience of ayahuasca in general. So, can you expand upon that?
Yeah, we think of ayahuasca first as a plant medicine. And so I think the first distinction we want to look at is, why in our cultures have we differentiated between the idea of a medicine and the idea of a drug? So, drug is typically being used in a derogatory form to describe the use of certain substances that don't have medicinal purposes. And the tribal societies that sit behind the ayahuasca cultures have always said from the beginning, this is a medicine and it's used as a medicine and it has a healing purpose associated with it. And then you look at the tribal societies that are utilizing these plants and they don't have a drug culture at all. Like it doesn't exist. You will not find MDMA in their culture. You will not find the use of pills and opioids in their culture. Like it doesn't exist. So this idea of a recreational drug culture is a complete misnomer. It's a Western adaptation or adoption, like taking these plant medicines and then using them in a recreational drug sense. Then, especially with ayahuasca, there's very little, if any, recreational purpose associated with it. One, it's an unbelievably profound and deep experience. Two, kind of the typical superficial nature of a recreational drug experience is immediately transcended by almost everybody who participates in ayahuasca ceremonies to something so profound, so core, so deep, so spiritual in its nature, so important to their soul that even people who thought they were having a trip come out of it and say, okay, that's something completely different. So there's that whole thing through the now global cultural zeitgeist around ayahuasca. Then there's the understanding that if you're tapping into something that is innate but beyond our typical field of awareness, that's going to transcend the notion of sitting in an egoic self, quote, getting high. And that there isn't fundamentally a nature to the experience like that either. And so I just think it kind of misses on all the cultural points to describe something in the terms that we normally do of this kind of drug. In terms of the cultures again that utilize ayahuasca, the the sacred keepers of the medicine are considered doctors of their tribe. So the shamans or the medico vegetalista, they're called medico vegetalista, which means plant doctor. So the plant doctors of their tribe are the only people who have it, the only people who prepare it, the only people who administer it, and the only people who oversee the ingestion of it. So now, if the closest Western example we have of that is a doctor prescribing medicine. And even then, it's one step closer. It's like doctors prescribing medicine in hospitals, not like doctors prescribing medicine for you to take it home. Because when somebody takes this, when this medicine is administered, the doctor sits with you and stays with you through the administering process of it and actually watches over you and makes sure that you're guided and safe through the nature of the entirety of that process. So there's also this incredible hands-on approach that's built within the tribes about really providing a kind of support and service that also transcends the notion of the Western drug culture. So I just think it's a misnomer. We can look at the chemicals and say, yeah, sure, there's dimethyltryptamine in that, or there's an MAOI, there's harmaline in that. Um, you know, but that's stripping away the culture that sits behind the plant down to just two components of so many other components that ultimately turn it both culturally and as a substance itself, I think, into something that requires reclassification or recategorization.